The Heat struggled to score on Wednesday night versus the Lakers, but found just enough in the fourth quarter to get their first win of 2024. A good win, and several players stepped up throughout the game, 8 of them scoring in double digits. And Miami capitalized on some brutal Lakers shooting and ball handling. We'll break down the victory and which players shined on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, and joining me as always, it's longtime NBA reporter David Ramil. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Recording this Wednesday night, well, actually early Thursday morning. It's almost 1 a.m. After the Heat beat the Lakers 110-96. Jimmy Butler out again for the Heat with that foot injury. Also no Caleb Martin or Haywood Highsmith. The Heat started Kyle Lowry, Tyler Herro, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Nikola Jovic, and Bam Adebayo, and managed to beat the Lakers thanks to turnovers, some timely shot making, and plus a big fourth quarter from Duncan Robinson. We'll hand out some credit cookies later on. But David, what was your takeaway from this one?
It was a brutal game to watch offensively. I think both teams really struggled to score, and Miami just seemed a little uneven. It felt like Tyler in particular struggled in the first quarter. He wound up with 21 points, and I watched the final stat line, and I was a little surprised that he wound up being that productive. It's not a knock on him, but I just think the Lakers' overall size did such a good job of limiting their pick and roll, especially with Tyler ball handling. Every time he seemed like he was going to make an entry pass or a quick pass to a cutter or something like that, it seemed like they would snuff it out and wind up forcing a turnover in Miami's end. And then Miami wound up kind of picking up the pace overall, led by Nikola Jovic. Fantastic game for him. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. And their transition offense was really their staple in order to muster any kind of offense, because they did struggle that way in the third quarter. It was a struggle for the Heat in particular, as Anthony Davis wound up going off in that quarter. He wound up having a big monster game. But in the fourth quarter, it was just a really nice mix of everything kind of working together for Miami. Some great outside shooting, Duncan in particular. Some nice attacks at the basket by Bam Adebayo. A good balance. They wound up having their best offensive quarter. I don't know that Miami should have necessarily won this game, but they certainly capitalized, as I said earlier, on the Lakers' mistakes. The Lakers shot 13% from three-point range. They went 0 of 7 in 2 different quarters and 1 of 8 in the fourth quarter. Like, they were brutal from three-point range, and their ball handling was absolutely sloppy. I mean, as good as Miami's defense was in forcing those turnovers, a lot of them were unforced as well, just bad passing from the Lakers. But you know what? You take it. A win's a win. You're on the road. You're without 3 key players in your rotation. You're getting other guys to find a way to step up. It's a great win, and Miami Heat fans should be absolutely happy that they got the W.
They go up to 2-2 on this 4-game trip. They've got 1 game in Phoenix on Friday night, and they could end this thing 3-2 on this 5-game trip, with Jimmy Butler having only played 22 minutes on this swing so far. That's pretty impressive. The Lakers had LeBron. He was sort of a game time decision. He ends up playing. Anthony Davis ends up playing. And look, there's that whole conversation of, did you win the game or did this team lose the game? And it felt like the Lakers very much lost this game. But even like the ESPN broadcast before the game said, hey, you can't beat yourself and beat the Heat, and that's sort of their whole deal. And so credit to Miami. Like, the Lakers are out here fumbling the ball, 21 turnovers for them. And Miami only had 7 turnovers. They didn't make a whole bunch of shots, but I thought they got really good looks. And when you just take away the shot making for a second, you just look at the process of what this game was.
Yeah.
Offensively, I thought Miami got all the looks that they wanted. They missed a bunch of them early, but they got all the looks. They missed, I think, 5 wide open threes in that first quarter. And I think 4 or 5 shots at the basket that they should have made. And then the Lakers defense kind of put the clamps on, especially Anthony Davis. He really bothered basically everybody that was at the basket for Miami, and he was amazing tonight. But LeBron didn't really have it. The role players didn't really have it for the Lakers. It was basically just Austin Reeves and AD. And meanwhile, the Heat and Max Christie, I guess, on that one dunk. But the Heat played 8 rotation guys tonight.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't even call them rotation guys because some of them aren't really rotation guys, but they were their rotation guys in this game. And all 8 of those players scored in double digits. And that's pretty remarkable. Nikola Jovic, 15 points. Jaime had 16. Bam had 15. Tyler had 21. Lowry had 10. Kevin Love had 10 and 14 rebounds. Duncan Robinson had 13. Josh Richardson had 10. That's a team win for Miami. They did not beat themselves. The Lakers did beat themselves, and you take that when you're on the road.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of Lakers fans and Lakers media looking at the stretch for the Los Angeles, they're under 500 now, but they were before this, they were looking at a bunch of games in the month of January at home at the Crypto Center. And, this was our opportunity for them to pile up some wins and kind of make a little, create a little cushion for them at the bottom of the Western Conference standings. They did not. They absolutely looked, very bad. Miami did just enough, and you're on the road against a good team that's struggling to find their kind of identity right now. I still think the Lakers are a playoff team, despite what their record reflects right now.
Agreed.
And so for Miami to be able to get this kind of egalitarian offense from so many different players, a well-rounded effort, just enough defense, just enough scoring, and especially in key possessions. The fact that Miami didn't buckle in the fourth quarter, considering they were on the road, and that their offense struggled so much in the third quarter, I think really speaks volumes of the integrity of this team and the players that were out there representing Miami tonight. Now, fitting, I think, that they were wearing their culture jerseys out there tonight, because I think they really did show a little slice of Heat culture out there. It was a good, gritty win for Miami.
They were up like 12 points at one point in the third quarter, up 10 to begin the fourth quarter, and the Lakers just kept coming back in this thing, especially late in the third, early in the fourth. They just kept clawing back. They got it to within 3 points a couple of different times, and every time that happened, some Heat player, and in the fourth quarter it was mostly Duncan Robinson, some Heat player made a big shot or made a big play to push the lead. Defensively, they went to the zone a lot in this game.
Yes.
And so, again, going back to the process conversation that I was having a little bit before, where offensively I thought they were getting the looks that they wanted, the Heat were, and just missing some shots, and then those shots started going in later in the game. Defensively, it was sort of like a prevent defense. You knew they looked so small compared to the Lakers. The Lakers are running out this new lineup with no true point guard, no D'Angelo Russell, no Gabe Vincent for them. So they're playing LeBron at point LeBron. Austin Reeves is next to him, and then it's a bunch of wings and bigs that they're always playing them with. And so they looked enormous in this game, especially compared to the Heat, who were running pretty small. Yeah. But they go to that zone. They stay in that zone out of necessity for the most part, but it was sort of a prevent defense. You're going to allow some certain things. Some guys are going to make shots. They got beat at the rim a couple of different times with backdoor cuts and things like that. Bam had to play up on Anthony Davis, and he ended up hitting LeBron. Bam ended up having to play up on LeBron in one play, and then LeBron hit AD on a lob, and you're like, wow, they just busted the zone. But you give a couple of those up, but ultimately the zone worked in limiting and slowing down the Lakers offense. And I thought it was a great coaching job by Eric Spoelstra. It was a good process win for the Miami Heat, a good road win overall. Fourth quarter, 38-29. The Miami Heat beat the Lakers 38-29 in that fourth quarter. We talked a lot about Miami's fourth quarter problems this season. That was not the case in this one.
No, I think, I'm glad you brought up the whole process, the fact that they were getting those open looks later on, because I think they kind of maintained that steady attack and found that balance once everybody kind of started to get it going. In particular, look, Duncan Robinson, like when he starts hitting those shots from the perimeter, it makes things so much easier, because then he spaces the floor. You kind of have to be a little bit more aware. He had a nice drive to the basket where he wound up having a layup high off the glass over Anthony Davis. That versatility that we've talked about all season just kind of added a dynamic to this offense. And then all of a sudden you see Bam cutting to the basket more, getting to the line, getting fouls, getting that defense to kind of, have to play catch up on who had the ball in their hands. A couple of other guys stepped up, hit some nice shots too. It was a really good fourth quarter for them. And again, I think it was just showing that kind of overall integrity.
You mentioned Duncan Robinson. I have a feeling you're going to be giving out some credit cookies to him. We're going to do credit cookies after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet, just a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, whether you win or lose. And the app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live game, same game parlays, You can find bets in the new Explore tab. Makes it so much easier to find things. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. The best way to find popular parlays. There's so much more, but you can only find it if you go visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, David, it's another Heat win, which means it's time for the tastiest segment of Locked On Heat. It is time to hand out some credit cookies. David, who are we giving cookies out to today?
Well, we mentioned 8 players in double-digit scoring, but I've got 6 players that get cookies that are actually cookie-worthy. I've got 2 for Jaime, 1 for Duncan Robinson, 1 for Kyle Lowry, 2 for Tyler Herro, 1 for Bam, 1 for Kevin Love, and 2 for Nikola Jovic. I'm sorry, that's actually 7 now that I do my math right there. I'm slipping a little bit in 2024. 7 players getting cookies on tonight's win against the Lakers.
Let's start there with Duncan Robinson. 11 points in the fourth quarter. Had a stretch kind of midway through the fourth quarter. The Lakers cut the lead back to 3. And Duncan makes a tough shot in the corner off of an offensive rebound that nobody – it was like a Steph Curry kind of chaos shot. And he just shakes his head himself after he made it. Hits a huge shot. They go back up 77-72. On the very next possession, he has a layup over Anthony Davis. You mentioned that in the last segment. They go up 79-72. The Heat end up kind of pushing that lead back to 10. Duncan Robinson over that stretch, 5 points. The ones I just mentioned. Also Kevin Love, who you handed out some cookies to, had 4 points and an assist in that stretch. And I don't know that that was a stretch to win the game because there was quite a bit of time left. But if it wasn't the dagger, it felt like something close to it.
You had to create that cushion, considering how much Miami's offense had struggled up to that point. You had to be able to find some way of finally capitalizing on those open looks or even those really challenging looks that Duncan was able to hit. I love that he took that three-pointer, another three-pointer, not just that one that was a fadeaway in the corner, another one where he was a catch and shoot, nailed the three-pointer, I think as the shot clock was winding down, and kind of turned and said something to the Lakers bench. Who knows what it was that he said? Was
it directed to Gabe Vincent?
It might have been. It might have been. Who knows? Who knows?
He pointed. He said something and he pointed, and it was in the. I'm not reporting anything, but it was in the Gabe Vincent vicinity. Gabe Vincent wearing some interesting checkered pants in this game. But look, he had 11 of his 13 points in the fourth quarter, and that kind of felt like what this game was, right? Like Tyler Herro had that big run at the end of the first quarter, the start of the second quarter. Jaime had a big run in this game too. Kevin Love, what I just mentioned, Duncan Robinson, 11 points in the fourth quarter. Like Kyle Lowry, a big run in the first half too. Like it was just different players. It wasn't everybody all at once. It was kind of different players going on their own sort of individual runs. And I know that's very simplistic, and that's not exactly what happened, but it's sort of what that game felt like. Who else do you want to go to next?
I think Nikola Jovic. I think that's his story, right? He gets a start again. The second time that they've used this particular lineup, second time on the road trip that he started with injuries to Caleb, Haywood, and Jimmy, of course, and he gets the start. And I think,
they used the lineup the last time, October 28th against Minnesota, another game without Jimmy Butler. And that was just sort of a weird one. And Miami lost that game. They ended up winning this one, obviously.
Well, you notice a trend here, right? I mean, against Minnesota and against the Lakers, and you mentioned their front court size and the overall size in that lineup. And Nico seemed like the one player that wasn't really struggling with that size because he is so good and because he is such a tall player.
Yeah.
Miami's tallest player in that starting lineup. When you think about it, he's taller than Bam, running the floor, finding cutters, made a nice three-pointer. I think John Crotty on the broadcast team made a good point that, something I've said about Haywood Highsmith, but I think we're starting to see it with a lot of players, but we see it with Jovic too. He hits that first three-pointer, and from that point, he's kind of a little bit more relaxed, and you kind of see him get into the flow, being able to showcase the wide and varied skill set that he possesses at that size, and he looked much more comfortable, had some nice possessions defensively, really solid rebounding, I want to say too. I think overall it was just a really good game from him. He was not fazed by the Lakers' size and wound up really having a nice overall game for him.
15 points and 8 rebounds, and did not play at all in the fourth quarter, I'm pretty sure, or very little. I
Yeah,
don't
very
know if he
little.
got in at garbage time at the end there. But there was a point where I thought he was going to get his first career double-double, right? And this is arguably his best game of his career, I think, given the matchup and the stakes and the fact that this was a
Yep.
real game that mattered. So,
Yep.
look, in the first quarter, he hits that catch and shoot three. That's Miami's first field goal of the game. Their first score was a pair of Kyle Lowry free throws, but their first field goal wasn't for a few minutes. As they just kind of, again, came out clunky, missing a bunch of open shots. He made their first field goal. A couple possessions later, a coast-to-coast possession where you're just, and then the broadcast, Mike Breen and Doc Rivers were like, whoa, this guy's pretty skilled, And so all that happens. But I think my favorite possession or my favorite sort of series from Nico in this game was in the third quarter. He grabs the rebound, defensive rebound, brings the ball up, waves off Kyle Lowry, bringing the ball up. Lowry obviously wants the ball because he's the point guard. Waves him off. No, I got this. Bringing the ball up the right side, points Bam into the post on the right side, same side, and just dumps it off into Bam in the post. Cuts behind the defense, below Bam along the baseline. Get nice wide open cut. Bam finds him for the pass. Little give and go. Gets the layup. Simple, but patient and mature and controlled and not at all wild. And it just seemed like he had a plan. He knew exactly what he wanted to do on that play. He saw something on the Lakers defense. Maybe they were pressing up a little bit too much or whatever it was. Bam, he wanted to maybe get him going because it wasn't the best Bam game. Whatever it was that Nico wanted to do, he did it. And that, to me, beyond the coast to the coast, the flashy stuff, like that's not going to show up on the highlight reel, David. That's something that you have. That's something you see watching this game. And I saw that and I was like, no, this guy's turning the corner. That's different. We haven't seen that before.
I'm not prepared to say turning the corner yet. And I know that's a conversation point for the next segment too. But I think it did show a great maturity to his game. And I think it's that kind of the ability to read the floor that he's honed over at the international game that we saw from him against, other international teams in the FIBA World Cup this past offseason. He looks so much more polished as a player. And then when he gets back in whatever limited opportunities he had over the course of the season, he has not looked that fluid. Today, I don't know. I'm not one to read much into these kinds of things, but we saw a lot of footage. I can't recall at what point that was over the last week or so, where Jimmy Butler, half jokingly, took Jovic under his wing, took him out to dinner. We saw some Instagram feed from Jimmy where he's having dinner there, kind of goes to a Sioux Falls game. He's talked about Jovic being his guy. There's a lot to it. And for all the criticism that I think has been unwarranted and about Jimmy Butler in previous cities, he has been such a great leader here in the locker room.
Yeah.
And just a guy who is very big on, manifesting what he says out loud and making sure that everybody's feeling, as long as they're putting in the work in. And that's the first thing you have to do for Jimmy Butler. That's the true test. If you're putting the work in, he will support you and he will be public in that support. And I think we're seeing that with Jovic. And I think he's had an improvement since then because it's huge for a guy who's kind of figuring out your footing. And you've got the superstar of the team saying, this is the anti-Jordan, right? The complete antithesis of everything we've heard of Michael Jordan. This is Jimmy saying, you're not getting the opportunity, but we're going to count on you at some point, and you need to be able to step up when you get that chance. And here we are seeing it manifest in real life.
It's such a great point. If Jimmy wasn't seeing that work being put in behind the scenes by Nico, he wouldn't be so loudmouth supportive right now, the way that he is. So it's such a great point, and we're starting to see it pay off, and in I think a very real way. This has been Nico's best stretch. Did you give any credit cookies to Tyler Herro?
I did. I think it was the shots weren't falling, but as you've mentioned, the process was a good one for Tyler. He had a lot of open looks. I know we're reading into it again. I wonder if he took the matchup with a guy he's been compared to so much in Austin Reeves pretty personally.
I think he did. I think him and Bam took their matchups personally in this one.
Yeah, I mean, the two guys that they've been compared to a lot, just because of similar play types and things of that sort.
Sure.
And
I
get it. I think he had some really nice plays. He has a couple big shots, but he was forcing the issue a little bit. I think maybe the size of the Lakers kind of, again, challenged him, especially in the first quarter as a playmaker. He wasn't able to get those open looks. But once eventually
him a little bit on those pick and rolls, kind of bothering him,
Yeah. But eventually, once he kind of settled into it, found his range in mid game, I think he had a couple nice floaters there. Had that one-handed floater to help Miami build that cushion in the third quarter. had a nice 3-point shot when it mattered most, and finished with 20+ points. I mean, he was Miami's leading
He
scorer.
was. He had 20.
Despite yeah, it
21
doesn't seem
points.
like it.
I mean, 21 points on 19 shots isn't great, but he was 4 of 8 from 3-point range. He had the 4 assists, just 2 turnovers, which wasn't bad. And he had 3 steals in this game. And when you're talking about what the formula was for Miami winning this game with the steals, Kyle Lowry had 4 steals, all of which came in the first quarter. Tyler Herro had 3. Bam Adebayo had 3. Like that, all the starters had at least 1 steal. That was very much part of the formula. And only behind Kyle Lowry did Tyler Herro trail in terms of total steals in this game. So I thought he was great. I think he was deserving of credit cookies. I mentioned the individual runs. He had 7 of Miami's last 10 points in the second quarter going into halftime that really built that cushion and built that lead. It was just nobody was amazing tonight. Nobody was, but he was as good as anybody else was on the Heat. And I think for that he's deserving of some cookies. But look, we talked about Nikola Jovic. Let's zoom. Let's look forward. Does his performance warrant more minutes going forward? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode of Locked On Heat also brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event, because Gametime is the fast and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater, events, whatever you're looking for near you. Gametime's got you covered with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, the views from your seat, and their best price guaranteed. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. There's so many different features that make this so easy. Again, if you're looking for tickets, let's say at the last minute, you figure out you want to go to a show or a game where you're traveling, or maybe you've got friends in town, you're trying to figure out what to do. You look up what you can find at Gametime. Sometimes, even as the show has started, whatever event that you're looking to has started, you might find tickets cheaper than had you waited or bought them weeks in advance. And that's what Gametime gives you, the last minute ticket deals that makes everything so convenient. You can find that best price available, and you can see exactly where you're going to be sitting from the views from your seats, so you know there's no obstruction or anything like that. You can enjoy the event, and you can save money in the process, because if you download Gametime app today and create an account and use the code LOCKEDON, you get $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms do apply, but you create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON, and you get $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button, comment under the video. Where are you watching us from? What did you think about the game?
Yes.
Who do you think is deserving of credit cookies? And maybe you'll have some comments about what we're about to talk about here, where we'll talk about Nikola Jovic and his role changing going in a second here. But I want to get to this first question from Sergio. Thanks to everybody who sent in questions using that hashtag AskLOHeat. Sergio writes in, even though it was a great overall win, did Bam lose any points nationally by coming up short matching up against Anthony Davis tonight? So David, quickly, before we answer that question, the stats. Bam Adebayo had 15 points on 5 for 14 shooting, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 2 turnovers. Not a bad game, but definitely not what you'd expect from somebody like Bam. Not for him. Anthony Davis, on the flip side, was the game's most dominant player and won his matchup. 29 points, 17 rebounds, 5 blocked shots. And he went 10 for 17 from the field. He was amazing. He looked like the best player on the court tonight. He very much was. And on a day where ESPN runs this big feature about how Bam Adebayo wants that national respect, wants to be considered with the Anthony Davises and the Nikola Jokic's and the Joel Embiids, and knows that he has to put the work in to get there, right? He's not here claiming that he's been snubbed. He's just saying, I want to get to that point where I am at that level. He was not at that level tonight. Do you think he lost points nationally in a primetime game on ESPN?
Yes, I think so. I think it's an opportunity to showcase who you are as an individual player, especially with that Jimmy Butler. And we've seen it, time and time again throughout NBA history. When a star player goes down, the other star of the team finds a way to step up. I mean, you recall even during the Big Three era, there was moments there where Chris Bosh had taken so much criticism as, the big 2.5, all the kind of stuff that the national media was saying about the formation of the Big Three. And then there were games where LeBron and Dwayne were hurt, and Chris finds a way to step up and showcase, again, what he could do as a player and remind everybody, oh yeah, he's kind of a superstar, despite the fact that he has taken a back seat by choice. This wasn't the case. This was the opposite of that. Bam, with the opportunity to say, okay, no, Jimmy, it's my team. Right on my cape. I'll fly us to victory. And he didn't do it. The shots, a lot of them were makeable shots. I think there was a one block that you mentioned by AD. It was one late in the game where I think he clearly fouled him, where AD got hurt. His hand got hurt. I think he wound up fouling Bam, but they didn't call it. It doesn't matter. Like, you've got to be able to do. I don't know what it was exactly. I don't know if it was just the size of AD, a lot of pump faking underneath the hoop. It seemed like he was struggling a little bit with that overall size. It wasn't as aggressive as we've seen from him in the past. And I don't think he wound up having any kind of really standout defensive play either. Like, again, if you're looking at just the box score and you see what AD was able to do with those 5 blocks, and you see what Bam did with 3 steals, but also, again, chalking it up to the Lakers just handling the ball so poorly, I don't know that you come away from this game and say, oh yeah, Bam's a top 25 player in the NBA. At least that was not the impression that I mean,
I'm going to push back on this, and I don't think that this is going to matter nationally as much.
Okay.
First of all, the Heat won the game, and that tends to whitewash the poor performances that happen in the game. And it wasn't like he came out here and shot 0 for 8 and a complete dud. He still had 15 points. He still had 5 assists. Like, it wasn't a bad game. It was just bad for Bam, considering the context. And look, he did get thoroughly outplayed by Anthony Davis. But I think if you asked most casual or just most fans, not even casual fans, that's not even fair. If you asked most fans of the NBA, who's better, Anthony Davis or Bam Adebayo, they'd probably answer Anthony Davis. And I don't know that I would agree on that, but I think most people would say that. And so most people watching this wouldn't be surprised by what happened. And so they probably don't think much of it.
Maybe.
I do think that it wasn't a great look, but again, against the Lakers earlier in the year, he had 22 points, 19 rebounds, 10 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals, maybe his best game of his career earlier in the season in a triple-double. Like, we know he's capable of doing more in this specific matchup. It's not something where it's like, oh, here it goes again. Anthony Davis has got Bam's number, because that's not the case at all. And so I won't overreact too much of it. It's not a great look that this game was on ESPN in a big moment, like you mentioned, without Jimmy Butler, on a day where ESPN ran the Big Bam feature and they were talking about it a bunch at the start of the game. Like, that's not a great look. But again, I'm not going to worry too much about it.
I'm not worried either. But I think, to answer the question, I think when you have these opportunities on national television, this is the opportunity for those casual fans and even media members that don't get the opportunity to watch Bam throughout the 82 game season the way we do. You're flipping through the channels, you're looking on ESPN, you go, oh, Lakers Heat, that should be fun. Oh, no, Jimmy? I mean, you would have probably thought that Bam would score 30 points tonight and that he would be able to dominate in a way that he did not. And so I think if you're going to take away from this and have an opinion of what Bam was and whether or not tonight's game affected that opinion, I think it was probably lessened. Maybe not to a huge degree, but it certainly comes across not being convinced of Bam's greatness.
Quincy writes in, how do you see Nikola Jovic's role changing after this game? This is interesting. He starts at power forward, and he started one other game at power forward earlier in this road trip. Jamal Cain actually started the last game against the Clippers, and I thought that he could start again in this one. He actually didn't get any meaningful minutes in this game until garbage time. So I think there's the potential for Nico to play more of a factor in the rotation, although I'm not sure I'm ready to go that far. Let's remember, no Jimmy, no Haywood, no Caleb in this game. If those guys are available, if 2 of those 3 guys are available, Nico's probably not getting any minutes, because that's been the case all season long. But, hey, got to hand it to him. He got the start. He played really well. He was a big reason why Miami won this game. And I do think that there's some flux going on with the power forward spot. The Heat have not landed on a power forward. This is very interesting. The Heat are one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and I still can't tell you who, if everybody's healthy and Spoelstra had his bones about it, who he would start at power forward. Haywood Highsmith has started 15 games. Caleb has started 10. Kevin Love has started 5. Nikola Jovic has started 2 games, including 3 games now, including this one. Jamal Cain has started 1 game at power forward. I don't know who the starting power forward is for this team, and so I think there might be minutes there on the table for Nico to pick up.
I'm not so convinced about that. That's where I kind of differ. And I think he impressed. I think he showed what he's capable of. Although I don't think you or I are that surprised by what he's shown tonight. I just don't
I was
know that
surprised by what I
spoke.
saw tonight. I think he's
Were you?
talented. Yeah, no, I think he's super talented, super skilled. We've covered that. I
Yeah,
didn't see the maturity that he played facing
fair.
LeBron and Anthony Davis. I didn't see
That's
that
fair.
coming. That was
That's fair.
impressive.
Yeah, that's fair. At the same time, I don't know again that Spo saw enough defensively where he'll feel comfortable leaning on Jovic,
Right.
and I don't know that he's going to get playing time again. If you're thinking it from Spo's perspective, I mean he's probably going to go with Haywood because Haywood was so dynamic early in the season before injuries kind of bogged everything down for him, and it was part of that win streak that Miami was enjoying earlier in the season. And he's a guy who doesn't need the ball in his hands. He just loves Spo just loves what Haywood brings to the table as a
Yep.
starter. And I think Caleb, you still need that kind of
Both of those
dynamic
guys are going to
athleticism
be ahead in the pecking order. To your point,
for
yeah,
sure.
I don't know that I'm saying Nico's going to get in the rotation right away, but I think he's working towards it. So in terms of the question, do I see his role changing? Maybe not right away, but
Okay,
maybe by the end of the season. I don't know. I mean, there's going to be more injuries. That's the one thing we do know for sure with the Heat, and so he will
for
get
sure.
more opportunities. Do you think Haywood starts at power forward if everybody's
I do.
healthy?
Does
I think I'm
does Nico get is Nico ahead of Jamal Kane in the
yes.
pecking order, as you put it? Yeah, I think so too. I think that's fair.
If
But
only
he's
by virtue
behind.
of Jamal Cain being on a two-way contract, and he's just limited because of that by how many games he could play. There's
Fair enough.
also Spo's been playing Bam with Kevin Love a little bit more
Yep.
in those twin big lineups, so that's also an option. So ahead of the pecking order, to your point, David, it's Haywood, it's Caleb, and Kevin Love in some kind of order.
Yeah.
But there'll be matchups and there'll be opportunities and there'll be injuries, and Nico I think is doing work in getting onto the court a little bit more. But
Yeah.
I think you and I agree mostly. He's probably not part of the nightly rotation when everybody's healthy, but we'll see what happens. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.